Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to a Lyceum evening coming to you from the Paul Spiritualist Church on the south coast of the UK. We are a wonderful lineup tonight. We have with us wonderful Angela Foster. Angela, good evening, my darling.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, and thank you, Laurie, for inviting us.
Pleasure. And joining us from Denmark tonight, we have wonderful Tim Abbott. Tim, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Lovely to be with you.
And we have, this is where the bromance comes out, everybody, and I'm not ashamed of it. The lovely Jack Eckhart, who has been a wonderful friend, support, and demonstrator, as indeed has Tim here with us at Paul. So very warm welcome to you for this open evening of discussion and debate about our passion, which is spiritualism. Now, the title of tonight was suggested, it evolved from a conversation that I was having with the lovely Angela, and it's entitled, All Stops When You Get the Title. Now, we were having this discussion, were we not, Angela, about where does our development as working mediums, I mean, I've got three of the finest tutors that I know here with me tonight. No, I mean that. I don't blow smoke, you know that. But where does our quest for learning, does this go away? Does this dry up? Because, you know, to be fair, sometimes we do see demonstrated similar vein, you know, from my own point of view. This is my experience, so I can speak from this from the heart. I was demonstrating a few years ago, and halfway through the message, I said to the sitter, have I given you this message before? And they went, no, I've never seen you before. And I'm like, but I know this message. This is like it's coming from my memory rather than spirit. I'm not working in the psychic, but it's just all too familiar. And I sit with spirit quite often, and I ask questions, and they laugh at me or go down the pub and leave me alone to mull it over myself or whatever. But they actually came back and they said, because you've not advanced your mediumship. That was the answer to the question of why does this feel all so familiar now? And I really understood that. I really understood that because I was at that point. I was getting bookings. I was going out doing the work. And I didn't invest anything in me. I was not investing in me, in my mediumship, my advancement, my evolvement. So I get that. I get that. I had that epiphany moment, and I'm ever grateful for that time. Tim, sir, what is your thoughts just on this subject? We're going to go deeper into it, look at background things, but as a generic.
So I think spiritual education, if we can use that as a title, comes in many formats and through many experiences. It's not something I'm passionate about education, and I've done many exams, educational programs with different spiritual organizations. I partly designed an exam for a school down in Kent, and I love it. And I think there lies the key. You see, is it's very easy. I say it's very easy. It can happen that mediums, after several years of being in the company of the spirit, lose sight of the magic that being in the company of the spirit is. And I think as mediums, as ambassadors for spirit, we must never lose sight of the miracle that being in the company of the spirit is. Now, being in the company of the spirit, when I say that, I don't necessarily mean standing on a message, giving a pretty message. I have your mother here. She died of cancer. Her name is Susan. She lived in London. There you go. I've done my job. You know, mediumship is so much more than that. And the magic can come through what we understand as education. And I'm very severely dyslexic. but I'm proud, if that's the right word, probably my ego, to say that I'm quite highly qualified where spiritual education is concerned, because I've gone out of my way to learn the history, the mechanics, the science of what I am preaching. And it's simply not enough to stand on the platform and say, look, I've proven survival by giving you your mother and telling her name is Susan. And most mediums are capable of that if they believe and surrender to the spirit. But when you meet a 25-year-old man who has just lost, I don't know, his daughter, who is 3 or 4 years old, in the high street, the last thing they want you to do is stand on your soapbox and start giving mediumship and evidential mediumship about their daughter. What they want is for you to sit down and talk to them. And that can only come from a background of knowledge and understanding and your philosophy to give that support to that young man, to ease somewhat the grief and the pain that he happens to be going through in that moment. And I always say, will education give you a better link to the spirit world? And my answer is always no, it won't. Will education make your spiritual education make you a better medium? Most definitely, every day of the week. Because again, mediumship is not just about standing on a platform. As you know, Jack and I are running a weekend here at the moment, and then we go on to run another workshop in Denmark. And the last session we did today was just the discussion group on the difference between old-fashioned evidence, whatever that means, and modern evidence, whatever that means. And I tell you, it was such a lovely discussion. And the students were so inspired by each other's understanding of old-fashioned and modern evidence. It doesn't have to be on a platform.
Very true. Wonderful. Angela, what's your thoughts, my darling?
This is really interesting. I feel that the problem has been the explosion of those who feel they have a connection with the spirit world and want to share it, full stop. They haven't really understood the mechanics, the discipline, the time it takes to actually not just understand the connection with the spirit world, but then to deliver that to other people. You can't just stand up and give evidence. There are so many levels of evidence that's possible with the spirit world. And most of the time, it's like skimming a stone across the sea. You never see what's below the surface. All you get are a series of facts, and then they go on to the next and the next and the next. But until we can show what mediumship can achieve, and I'm not just saying like you do, like you've been saying, it's not just on platform, but actually, walking the walk as well as talking the talk. We cannot show people just what is possible with mediumship. Laurie and I we've been working together on a course, and I have been amazed at just how people's perception of what mediumship is, even as established mediums, is limited by not understanding the potential, not understanding that you can tell stories, that we're not just reading the aura of the spirit world. They're actually communicating to us their lives in such a way that not just those receiving the message, but that those who are hearing the conversation in the audience or the church or wherever you are can actually become emotionally involved with it. Until we can get the message across that mediumship is about emotion and not just about a bundle of words for which we receive yes and no, that the emotion can take us through every aspect of our lives, then we as mediums aren't doing our job properly. Brilliant. And that's what I feel we need to take people onto.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Jack, I can see you nodding away there in agreement. Your
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. I can't disagree with neither Angela or Tim. I don't dare to. No, no, we haven't been in any fight yet.
It's early days.
Nearly 20 years we have known each other now. But no, I do agree, and as I often says as well, as both of you had said, it's not about being on a platform. And to be honest, some of the best mediums I have known through the years have never been on the platform. They are what I sometimes call, in a positive way, call a kitchen mediums, sitting at home in the kitchen, doing the one brilliant sitting after another. The platforms is for the big egos as us. We love to be there. We love to shine our ego. And I think sometimes we just have to recognize that and say, oh, I love the spotlight. I love to work with spirit in that environment. I believe for myself, I think maybe for Tim as well, a thought could be maybe we should go do a bit of education practice, digging deeper into the one-to-one settings. And I know you're doing a lot of things. I'm doing some, but we are typical platform mediums. I think we can agree with that. So that's where the fun is.
Yeah.
But that's for us. The showmanship is.
Yeah.
My background is a bit different, probably from yours. Has a background from military. I'm military trained, and I have my teacher training through the military. Yeah, so it's a different approach to teaching. Teaching there and to learning. But what have been important for me during all the years is the understanding of what is happening behind it all.
Yeah.
From the first day I got into mediumship, I started to develop that. Was like, okay, I'm doing this, but what is happening if I'm doing like this instead? And what is like so? It's and we're looking at it from that aspect. As both of you have said, the understanding of the mechanics in it.
I think one of the things, Lawrence, as teachers, where we are failing our students is the focus. There are different layers of evidence, as Angela said there. And I've studied this quite a lot lately, and for me there are 5 different expressions of evidence. And what we have to remember first, before I list them, is that we are not one-dimensional. As human beings, we are not one-dimensional, and neither are our loved ones in the spirit world. They express themselves in many different expressions. For example, factual evidence, if you like, factual information, emotional evidence, spiritual evidence, symbolic evidence, subjective evidence. And when I say subjective, I mean the opinion of the communicator. For example, father comes and says, I was a good father. And the client says, no, he wasn't. But it's father's opinion. It's the weakest form of evidence, but hey, it's father's opinion. Yeah. And we're not looking at those different layers. And if we do, as teachers with our students, and encourage it through our students' mediumship, it brings the communicator alive. Now, I know the definition of mediumship, they are alive, but more so alive. So I love it when you have a medium working, a good medium, for example, Jack, and he starts to give a message, and you see people in different areas of the church say, I can feel that communicator. I can feel that communicator. Because through Jack's mediumship, he's allowing that communicator to feel the space of the church by the different layers and levels of being that the communicator is. We're failing our students because we're lacking to teach them.
Very true. Very true. I'm similar there. Jack, you used the words ego earlier on, and ego in a good way, because we do need an ego to be stand up there on a platform in front of people demonstrating, and I love that word, thank you, Tim, the miracle, because I always say this is a miracle. You know, what more in this world do you want than having that cinching piece of evidence that those who are no longer with us in the physical continue on, and that we will follow those footsteps? Now, that is a miracle to me, and it will never lose that shine, that beauty, because it just changes how we look at this world. Yeah, we've got a tough world at the moment. Okay, we work through it because we know that in the fullness of time, this is going to be a chapter in the book. This is going to be another facet of our spirit, our diamond within. You know, it's not the be all and end all. But yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, all three of you. And it is great that you are all teachers in your own rights. You're all qualified teachers, which is beautiful. What would you say to the working medium today who maybe, for whatever reason, now there can be other reasons, but I've got there, I'm doing my bookings, so I don't sit in circle anymore. I will sit to meditate when I can, and I most certainly wouldn't go to a workshop or something like that. How could we encourage and foster and engender people in these scope to start to work better?
Can I add to that comment? And
Yeah.
In our working lives, all of us are used to annual reports. We're used to having to upskill. We're used to having to put ourselves in front of somebody to say, how are we doing? How can we do better? But it seems to be that this industry has lost the will to move forward with our abilities. Now, teaching adult students, have found that the reason for this is not because they don't want to attend workshops. You will find many of us will go from workshop to workshop quite happily. It's because we don't want to put ourselves under the spotlight and receive criticism or feedback. We don't want to be told. We have very fragile egos, most of us who work on platform. We are very, very highly sensitive with, and we don't like actually to be criticized or to be told, well, do this way, or try it that way, or let's see if we can move you along in this direction. It's uncomfortable. And when you get to a certain age, most of us think, been there and done it. We've watched our children go through it. And really, we're quite happy in our little comfort zone. Unfortunately, things move on. Even, Tim, you were talking about the style of mediumship, and the evidence has changed. So much moves on because our understanding and our working with the spirit world changes. They are making demands of us now using technology, using remote conditions like this, that 30 years ago wouldn't have even have been in anybody's to-do list at some stage in their lives. Unless we keep up with this, and there's been a lot of wonderful studies done by Heidi Campbell in the States, who's looked at how people are attracted to religious understanding. And the young people are moving towards technology in order to join online churches and to be part of an online community. They're not, unfortunately, however much we want it, going into bricks and mortar churches. We, the teachers, have to know how to work with this media, this technology, to encourage the next generation on. And whether it's from the beginning of initial introduction to what spiritualism all is about, within a safe zone. Let's face it, COVID has moved us into a world that we couldn't have imagined happening in 20 years' time if it hadn't happened. But also it demands us as teachers to present mediumship in a different way. And it also demands that we keep up our skills, but that therefore there is going to become a great gap between those who can, those who do, and those who really are quite happy where they're standing. And that's how I see that the chasm is going to become greater. And we've got to find some way of bringing everybody together to understand that continuing professional development is not just limited to the workplace.
Very true. Very true. I mean, how much of this as well, not just putting mediums us under the spotlight. You know, when we look at the movement in general, and again, I'm never disparaging, I'm never having a dig at people, but we have got this formulaic approach to how we celebrate what should be a life-changing event. You know, Thursday we'll do an hour of mediumship, and Sunday we'll do our divine, and we might do the odd coffee morning with messages in between and things like that. So, you know, how can we start looking at maybe the churches and centres to present you even once a month, just do an experimental night of mediumship to try and create that, to try and work differently. Jack and myself and the lovely Lola, when they were here over a couple of weeks ago, seems ages now, but not that long ago, we did do nights of experimental mediumship. Now, to the experienced medium who has sat in many a circle, it's not so much of the experimental, because we were doing things like blind readings, we were doing psychometry and different things like that. Now, I know a lot of churches, if you said, oh, could I do psychometry? It'd be, oh, God, no, we don't do that here. So I think we need to look at the movement as a whole and all its facets, to start asking these questions about, why don't we have a change? Why don't you try something different? Here at Paul, we do different services, and I've had quite a lot of contact from other churches and centres saying, well, how do you do it? And I said, well, simply by talking to the congregation and getting them involved and trying things and fostering that. Do you know what? Take the blinkers off when you come in the church. Leave them at the church doors. We sit down. Tim, sir, I remember when you and the lovely Jeanette were here, we had a conversation after the service, and you said we thought that the hour-long format was a bit too short and it wouldn't be very good. However, your experience was totally the opposite, because it just works. It just falls together. And the intelligent, and see, this is something I think that we leave out, and I'm guilty of this, is the intelligence of spirit. We always have these conversations as a one-sided thing, and we don't actually sort of like go, "Oi, spirit, what do you think of this?"
I think the intelligence of spirit never ever lets us down. It's our own intelligence where the problem lies.
Yes.
However, I think maybe the approach there, and forgive me, your introduction to this side of the discussion highlights that you entitled the work that you and Jack did as experimental. But that's how Joe Public will perceive it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But what is the definition of experimental? You know, mediumship is mediumship. However it is expressed, it's an expression of discarnate spirit, and therefore you can either say all forms of mediumship is experimental, which is a bit outdated view, or we're going to do an evening of communication. How that unfolds, we'll let the spirit world be the directors of that.
Yeah.
And it's not experimental at all. It is driven by the intelligence of spirit, and therefore then it becomes the norm. I've designed what I call a modern Sunday service, but I've yet to have a church let me do it, because it's different. It's different. Well, I know I believe Jeanette and I are booked to come and see you. I think it's later on in the year or next year, whenever it is. And maybe we'll talk about it nearer the time.
I can always fit you in before.
And let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. How many either hymn books or texts of songs, sheet papers have you got that you've thrown away because somebody folds them up in the back of the congregation, or even worse, makes a plane out of them, or screws them up and they get stood on? And but we live in a world where just about everybody who's going to enter your church has a mobile phone. So why not on entrance? I'm talking modern now, not experimental at all. You can have some books and some paperwork. Why can't you say, well, it's going to be this song and this hymn? Just download it on your phone. You'll have the words then.
I like that. I really like that. Look out, son. It's tomorrow. Look out. But, sorry, joking aside, yes. You know,
you've got to start thinking modern, you know, and which is not experimental. It's just broadening the Angela's writing that down, that one.
No, it's experimental. Isn't that, you know, to do with the legal situation that we're having to use words like this? It's not what happens in fact. And I was just thinking, I must remember to say about that. Now you brought it up. Why are we using this?
I think maybe that's changed. I think, Angela, maybe that's changed since the 2008 Consumers Protection Regulation.
I hope so.
I believe before that was necessary for that statement to be made before each demonstration. But I don't think that's necessary anymore.
That's what I understood, that it had gone. I mean, you know, nothing should be in stasis. Everything should be moving us on a pace.
Absolutely.
And welcoming that opportunity. Yeah.
I think when we use the term experimental here was to it's the pre-warm up of the congregation to let them know this is going to be different.
Absolutely. You're catering for them. Yeah. You're catering for their outlook on spiritualism and mediumship. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we have to do that. Yeah. Indeed, that is our job. That is our job, to continually show this great and wonderful truth.
Potential. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with him. It's not really experimental. It's just different ways to work with spirits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to tell the congregation before they come, oh, this will be a bit different. And it's about, whilst we are on the subject of got the tile and then everything stops. That's, to me, that's I love to do these things because that's a way for me to stretch my mediumship.
Yeah.
And explore my mediumship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one element that I know all three of you very actively engage with is the no. Now, I know as a platform medium, especially earlier on, no was a disaster. It was like a hand grenade going off inside your head. It broke your link, it brought you back, it made you panic. But you teach a different aspect of the no, because the no is great. The no is energizing. The no is like, okay, I need to go back into this book and read it a bit more and go, gotcha, understand that.
I think before you're so right, Lawrence, but I think before you can instill that into a student, first of all, you have to instill their mindset. So if we look at, for example, what is the definition of an advanced student? And a lot of teachers will tell you, oh, well, it's somebody who has the ability to link to the spirit world. They don't need a teacher to help them do that. They can hold the link. They don't need a teacher to help them, and they can continuously bring factual evidence of a certain standard. Well, that's so shallow-minded, isn't it? Because an advanced student can be somebody who has no mediumistical ability at all, but is strong enough in their mind to have the experience, although it may be perceived as a failure, and have the approach, I will learn from that experience. That's the definition for me of an advanced student. And when they have that positive mindset and that strength of mind, and then they can start embracing the no's, as you so rightfully say, with a positive approach and as hey, let me see this as an opportunity to engage with the spirit world once again and sort out whatever I've misunderstood, whatever I've got wrong, and turn this no into a yes. Yeah, no's not a crime in mediumship.
No, no.
I actually years ago I designed a workshop called the positive no.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah.
Working with the no, a full day working with the no. It takes some strength from the students, because it hits, even though this exercise you're only getting no's, it hits them.
Yeah.
But it's a really good learning experience to learn to deal with that negativity that they often can be on no, and change the mindset into, oh, thank you. I did myself years ago, because I struggled with the no's as everybody else, and just turn and say, oh, thank you for that. And I got into sometimes saying to the client or the recipient, before giving my statement, for this, I'll actually ask you to give me a no, because I'm not quite sure this is right. So just said, please give me a no on this, because I know when I get the no, I can go back and sort it out.
Yeah.
I can't do that without getting the no.
Yeah. You love a no, don't you, Angela?
I love a no. I love a no, because it focuses you. I mean, sometimes if you don't get the no, it's very easy just to hammer out this information. If you get the no, you then begin to go in deeper. But it's all about having confidence to connect. I mean, I talk about the triumvirate in mediumship. We have the spirit world, we have the medium, and we have the recipient. And that sweet spot in the middle, when everybody's working together as one, where you're not having a conversation with the recipient, where you're not having just a conversation with the medium world and the recipient isn't included, where the recipient and the spirit world are not so engaged on their own emotional link that the medium might as well not be there. But there is this wonderful, wonderful spot in the middle. But perhaps at some stage we could talk about teaching the recipient. Could we do that too this evening? That is my big issue. The poor old recipient gets none.
You did do an amazing evening recently on here, and that is available in our YouTube library and our Facebook library, and it did come out as a podcast as well, about the recipient's role, and it was extremely well presented. But I do wonder, because we do spend a lot of time going back to the greats, the early greats of the movement. Gordon Higginson, anybody who's been in the movement and actually done some research, that name should just roll off the tongue. But when we look, when spiritualism really exploded, really took off, turn of the century in the UK, when it first came in, and funnily enough, up in the Midlands area, which I believe is because the ships were coming over from America, so the ports of Liverpool were disgorging all these migrants to our country, including the workers for spirit. And this is where spiritualism really took off. But at that time, we were on that tail end of the Industrial Revolution, where in a lifetime, our world had changed. So people's mindsets were very much open. They were living in a world of constant change, of constant flux, and managing it. But I draw that similarly to today. For the last 3 years, our world is in this constant flux, constant change. So my thinking is that at this time that we have that potential, we have that opportunity as spiritualists with our churches and our centres to work differently with the spirit, to engage in discussions like this. Discussions like this before were very limited to certain centres, colleges, wherever, where people could actually sit and talk, but that was not reflected within our churches and centres. I am seeing now a lot of places are utilising technology by going online. They're having their own in-house meetings to talk and discuss, to try, and just start to bring in these ideas, these different thoughts. But I do wonder, are we seeing here with the mediumship in the UK especially, where people may be getting not the adequate support, because we have that learning and development phase, and then we have the actual going out and working phase. It's that grey area in between, because we all remember our first service, do we not? We all remember walking out on a platform thinking words that I really can't say on public, but what the hell am I doing here? I feel a fraud. This is going to go horribly wrong because it's all about me and how I'm reacting to things. So, and I see this repetition of that energy. I was talking to Angela earlier, and I said one thing I've learned on the course about philosophy was I always raced at my philosophy. It was like 20 words a second. Blah, 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 blah. And I thought, why am I doing that? And I thought, because when I first came out on platform, the philosophy, although it was my greatest passion, it was also the greatest pressure on me to say things. So my natural reaction was to spurt it all out. And that becomes CMP, custom and practice. That I would race through my philosophy. And it was the lovely Tim, what did I call you? The master of the pause. We sat and rewatched one of your service here, and I was just so blown away by seeing the way you delivered the philosophy. And I thought, got it. So, you know, it's that hinterland, it's that funny area where we may be going out and working on the platform, but then becoming a bit too entrenched of, I'm getting bookings, so what do I need to learn more? Or I don't need to sit in circle or whatever. And it's that is a crucial area, I think, especially in the first few years of working. So go out and work for 6 months and then say, do you know what? And I've had this conversation with so many mediums of late. Every time the phone rings and somebody wants to book you, don't say yes automatically. Just say, oh, leave it with me, I'll get back to you, and think about it. Because we are seeing a shortage of mediums to work on our platforms. And I do believe that I'm seeing a few mediums who are working phenomenal amounts of time on platforms. Where is your self-development in there? Because, do you know what? We're not here just to teach people that life is progressive, that our spirit is eternal, that we're here to evolve and grow. You know what? So are we. So are we. Thoughts on that, please?
Okay, I'm you know me, I'm happy to talk. I love the sound of my own voice. I think there comes a time, and again we come back to this mental strength. I think there comes a time, we will always be the student. If you like, we will always be the student of life. We have to accept that. But mediumistically, there has to come a time when, and not for all mediums, just because you're a developed medium doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a teacher of mediumship. But there has to come a time for those who are moving into that teaching aspect of the mediumship and spiritualism. There has to come a time when you have to start thinking as the teacher and not as the student anymore, because you're going to be inspiring other people, and there has to be an energy about you. There has to be an understanding and a knowledge about your subject and your science. So for me, I think it has to be self-responsible for self-development. So, and what I say to, as you know, I teach a lot of advanced students. And so I say there has to come a time, not when you become your own teacher, but you become your own inspirer. And that will come in many formats. So you mentioned Gordon Higginson. So one of the ways I become inspired of late is and you mentioned the Midlands, and I live in the Midlands. I married a girl from the Midlands, and I live 20 minutes from where Gordon lived, and I'm very good friends with his niece Leslie. And so every couple of weeks, either me and Jeanette will go round to Leslie's house, or Leslie will come round to mine. And I'm like a child in a candy store. Like, tell me stories about Gordon, and it so inspires me. So it's not necessarily texts, but I think there comes a time when you have to be responsible of feeding and nurturing your own spirit and your educational understanding of this spiritual science But we're so happy with our egos to stand up and preach. Yeah.
Mm. What do you think, Angela?
You're talking about the development of the self and the presentation of the self on platform and how that draws an audience. Obviously, with Gordon Higginson, it was very obvious what his modus operandi was. I mean, you could see it, you could feel it. And I always teach in my classes, the Japanese have this lovely word called umami, and it's an ingredient that they put into their cooking that makes it special. And part of that umami ingredient, which we've tried to bottle in this country, but we can't, is the input of the self into the dish that creates that umami effect, UMAMI. Now, the best mediums I see on platform are those that honor and acknowledge themselves as part of the process, not as an ego trip, but acknowledge that their input with their individuality, their own way of showing the importance of the spirit world, which shines from within, because it's like it becomes like an open channel. Mm-hmm. That when they start going to, and I'll say too many courses and start adopting too many styles and have then forgotten what their own presence is all about, that's when they lose what it is to be a true channel for spirit. Because you need to flavor that message. You need to flavor that relationship. As you do with a conversation, you know, we don't go and have a conversation with a friend and let it be cloned like the conversation with another friend. We want to shine ourselves. And if we can be taught that this relationship that we have with us as individuals adds, I mean, what do they say? For example, we were talking about addresses. 8% of the words and 92% is the presentation. Well, where does that 92% come from? It's got to come from the medium delivering it. And instead of realizing that that is so important in mediumship as well, when we're delivering mental mediumship and messages, because people are frightened to show themselves. It's a vulnerability. It's not an ego. Very often it's a vulnerability. And this takes a maturity which many young mediums fail to realize has to be gained by experience, by life, to be part of that package, which then gives them the credibility to say, here I am, this is what is possible, and I want to share that with you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to pick up on a few comments coming in here, and thank you everybody for joining in. Just going back a few notches, Amanda Price, we were talking about critique on our work, and she's just agreeing it's the way you say it, obviously, and constructive criticism is fine. And yes, that's a very healthy approach, Amanda, so well done. I do know of a medium who was asked to present an up-and-coming night and declined after a few because every time constructive criticism, I know this person, there's not a bad bone in their body, was offered, it was no. So yeah, we've got to learn that. I've had criticism on Angela's course, and that's why we don't work together anymore, and that's absolutely fine.
What has ended? It's come to the end of the 8 sessions. That's the reason.
I'll be perfectly honest, the first bit I did walk out and just thought, get over yourself, Lawrence. But yeah, we do need that to evolve and grow. You know, and when do we grow the best is when we're pushed. You know, when do we shine the brightest? When it's the darkest. You know, I can come out with all those cliches. But yeah,
you see,
go on.
Sorry, Lawrence.
No.
You see, we're very good at teaching students the process and the act, the craft of mediumship. Be in the company of the spirit, spurt out some pretty words, all you're marvelous. But we don't look at the psychology behind the mediumship for the medium themselves. And I always recommend every developing medium read a theory by 2 American clinical psychologists. And I can't remember that, Susan Ims, I can't remember the other one, forgive me, called the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome. And I tell you, every medium on this planet should read that. They really, really should, because it so strengthens the individual's mind, because we see a no as a personal attack. We see feedback from a teacher as a personal attack, when of course it's not. It's not at all. But we have to educate our students in that fact.
Very good. Very good. We have a lovely question here from Claudia from Switzerland.
Ah, lovely girl.
How to convince students of the magic of no limitations working with spirit, if there is a frame of rules on the human side to follow or achieve. No matter if religion or set expectations is not easy. A student should have room to unfold naturally. I can't comment really. We don't have the same approach to mediumship in Switzerland. If a tutor is truly inspired by spirit when teaching, excitement is created automatically. Many people hesitate about self-work. It takes time, but I think it's profound. Very true. Thank you, Claudia. And you raise a very interesting energy there that's been buzzing around. When we first went like this online and talking to people, not only from our own countries, but from Europe and the States as well, we very quickly discovered that here in the UK, we are very blessed with the amount of churches and centres that are prolific across all 4 nations. And the opposite is in effect in Europe. But I keep saying to people in Europe, look to the UK and see what's going on, but don't model it on the UK. Look to see where room can come in for improvement, to pick the best. You know, we have so many churches and centres, and I think sometimes that's to our detriment. If you take it, each church maybe does 2 dems of mediumship a week. Any church calendar then has 50 empty slots at the beginning of the year. If you multiply that by the number of churches and centres across the world, across the UK, that's a lot of demand. That is a lot of demand. And when we have faced with demand, and I've been there as a medium secretary, it's like, oh my God, quick fill these spaces. As soon as I've got them all full, that's it. I've accomplished my job. I've done it. But then maybe are we looking at quantity over quality at times with it? So there's not only a demonstration of mediumship, evidential mediumship, to celebrate the work of spirit. There are so many more avenues, so many more ways that we can link in and express that and share that with people. I seem to be doing a lot of talking tonight. This is not fair. There we go. Libby, lovely Libster. Feedback is a gift. Such a shame all too often people associate feedback with criticism. Yeah, this is becoming a common thread here. And again, as the lovely Angela was saying, we are sensitive. And that's something we've got to work with ourselves. We are sensitive. And I've said to some people sometimes, you know, comments after service are sort of like, whoa, can you bring that down a bit? Because I'm a bit raw here, and that is like an unrosin bow on a violin. It's stop it.
Can I just say about that in one thing I've learned in undergoing teacher training is that the feedback sandwich is you give a nice bit, you give the hardcore, and then you give a nice bit. Now, different organisations have different names for that, some of which are a bit more rude than others, but basically, you know, you try and sugarcoat the difficult stuff. But the problem is that people, I know when I've been working with the students, I've had to give assessments so that I can value the work they've done and ensure that they've reached the standards. I couldn't say that to my students, I'm going to give you an assessment, because that would terrify them and send them out the door. It's, you know, let's try a task out and then we'll give you a bit of feedback and see how you feel. But if feedback is given in the right way, if it's given constructively, if it's given appropriately, if it's not meant to denigrate or to cause anybody to become uncomfortable, then it can be acceptable. Part of the teaching requires me then to ask the students to give feedback. Now, I fought this for a long while because I thought students are going to be having a difficult enough time me giving them feedback without then their peers going, well, that really wasn't very good, was it? But we, as individuals, are really good at doing that to other people, aren't we? We're really good at saying, well, that was a rubbish address, or that was a rubbish demonstration. And we don't like it when the tables are turned.
No.
And that's, I think, because no,
No, we don't.
we're not exposed to it, are we? We tend to think that that's what the teachers do with us at school. We leave school and then that's it. But there's so many opportunities in life if we were to reflect, self-reflect on how we're doing first. If we were to be exposed to that self-reflection, how did I do last night? Did I meet my aims? Did I reach the people I wanted to do? Did I feel that it was received well? We then can accept that other people may say to us, hang on a bit, that didn't quite work well, or actually that was really good. So I think the problem is that with all this about feedback and about education, we've cut ourselves off to the benefits, seeing only the issues of, and that's where the problem is. We know how far we can go if people just tweak us in the right direction, and it's done with love, light, truth, trust, and wisdom, and all the other lovely words. It's just very hard to admit that we're not perfect. I mean, who wants to? You get to a certain age, of course we're perfect.
Yeah.
Since we can tell everybody everything.
I don't even know why you're questioning it. What's the matter with you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Gentlemen, got something to add there.
Yeah. From my own experience, like Tim and myself have been working together for a number of years and done quite a few like demos together, and we always have a discussion or debate about how was this and so on. So and being honest to each other about what you did there, the way you handled that recipient, and to me that has been so inspiring. I know, Lawrence, the two of us had some of these debates as well, and I think that's if we allow ourselves to ask another equal qualified medium to give us feedback and talk with honesty and be open to the possibility of improvement in our mediumship.
Yeah.
I believe we are all where we're not really taking a lot of courses or anything anymore, are we? But still, our mediumship is changing. We are exploring it in different ways, and to me, a big part of that is having these debates, having these talks, and and even from a teaching point of view. Not being afraid of sharing. Tim, I just got this new exercise. I had a similar one, and have So it's going back to the inspiration again. We can inspire each other so much if we allow it. But I believe very much about our mindset. Exactly. We were talking about the ego. I mentioned the ego before. But there's many ways to present our ego.
Yeah.
And the good way to present the ego is okay, I would love to be in the spotlight. I love to be in the spotlight together with Tim. But I love to be in the spotlight afterwards, away from the congregation, just the two of us, having a chat about whatever was going on.
Yeah.
That suits my ego as well.
This raises an interesting topic. When I first came into spiritualism years ago, it was more commonplace. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep my hands away from my face because I got told off earlier by teachers.
It weren't me.
I've got these hands, so I don't know what to do with them now, so I'm just going to sit on them. There we go. It was much more commonplace where mediums would work together on platform. It was very commonplace. It was nothing unusual. Nowadays, it tends to be the exception rather than the norm. But we used to have mediums. One would be particularly good maybe with their philosophy. So they would take the philosophy part and maybe step in for a few messages. But what I'm getting at here is we had those peer groups. We had those times. We could go away. All due respect, and I don't mean this pointedly or nastily, but quite often after taking a service or a dem, you get the obligatory, "Oh, that was lovely." You know, and I would like somebody to say, "Oh, Laura, what? What is wrong with you tonight?" I would love that. I would seriously, appreciate that more and give genuine, honest feedback. But again, we're going back to the churches and centres roles in this as well. But as mediums, we should be looking to work with others. How often do you see a working medium go to see another working medium?
You're right, Lawrence, and both Angela and Jack are correct in their statements about giving feedback to each other and allowing students to look at the teacher's teaching and the teacher's mediumship. But I think we have to be careful here with this, because I think you have to be of a certain mental strength to be able to look at your own mediumship and allow other people to look at your own mediumship. Otherwise, as I think Angela said at the beginning of the evening, you become very vulnerable and maybe even see it as a personal attack. So I'm very lucky that I do get to work with a lot of other mediums. I don't know, 5 weeks ago, I did a demonstration with Libby Clark and Moira Hawkins. Tomorrow, I'm doing a demonstration with Lola. And the next night, I'm doing a demonstration with Jack. So but these are people who are mentally strong enough that after the event, you can sit down and say, well, I like that bit. Maybe I should have done this there and worked that a little bit different and gone back to the spirit. But there are only, I'm not saying there's a certain amount of people, but a certain type of mediums and spiritualists that are of a mental strength level, if you like, that you can do that to without actually, and may I dare to say, actually that it caused damage.
Yeah.
Than a positive, it become a negative than a positive in there. So are you saying I shouldn't have been on the platform? No, I never said that. What I'm saying, and you realise straight away. So for example, very recently I was in Switzerland. And on the Saturday, a student asked me a question and I answered it. On the Sunday, another student asked me exactly the same question. I gave them a completely different answer. And someone said, well, hang on a minute, Tim. When Mary asked you that question yesterday, you answered it this way. Now Susan's answering it. You're answering it in a completely different way. I said, yes, because they're at completely different levels of their development. So they require completely different answers.
Yeah.
Because where they're at mentally, on their spirit and spiritually, so my relationship with somebody within their medium, as feedback from their mediumship, will depend most definitely on where they're at mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and so quite often, I would say probably 80% of my teachings, whilst I'm teaching, I am doing mediumship.
Yeah.
I'm teaching through my mediumship.
Yeah.
And so I'm allowing myself, through my sensitivity, maybe through my relationship with spirit. That doesn't mean I'm saying, oh, Chief Sitting Bull, come and inspire me how to talk to this student. But I am being inspired from a teacher's point of view how to deal with a particular student, depending on where that student is on their particular journey. And that depends, and that also it involves, as Jack's just indicated, fellow mediums as well. There are some fellow mediums who walk out of a demonstration and go and try and kick the local cat alley cat or will and swear at the moon because they hate the spirit world because it went wrong for them. Well, then maybe you shouldn't be a medium, because you're mentally not strong enough.
Can I pick you up on that point? You've made a really interesting point there. Should mediums be of a sound mental caliber? Does that sound too strong? Should we have seen, I mean, I'm sure that we've all witnessed people who shouldn't be delivering messages because they are not strong enough themselves emotionally, mentally to do this. But if we started this progress, as we do in a work situation, of accepting feedback, we'll use as a nice word, right from day one, and accept that this is going to have to be continuing, then will we be creating a new generation of stronger mediums who are prepared then to self-reflect and to get feedback? Is this perhaps a cultural thing? And then are we adding to these sensitivities by not including this in the training going forward? Are we not creating, should we be creating tougher mediums? I don't know. I mean, not losses, just asking, just wondering.
No, I think that is, like you quite rightly said, in our professional careers on the railways, we had this process called continual development. And we did it, and it worked. I think we have got a bit of a cultural thing going on with the way we are presenting the beauty, the majesty, the magic of spiritualism that has become quite formulaic, which is also reflected in our demonstrators, that we will do this scattergun approach. Oh, your mother's here, she's holding up a red hanky, she's got a banana, she's throwing pineapple at you, and not go, well, what does the pineapple mean? Not finding out the full chapter and verse of the object. So, yeah, I think there is scope there to look at how we develop, look at how we progress. And part of that is having this interaction with people. We have our peer groups. There's not one of you here that I would not open up to and be honest if I had any doubts or any queries. But there are other people I just think, like Tim pointed out, it's in your mediumship. Some other people probably wouldn't grasp it, so I'm just not going to go there with it. And similarly with me, I understand some people feel quite happy to open up with me. Other people may feel a bit intimidated or whatever, and they never would. But I think this is a big part of our development, that we need to go back. And again, this is probably why this message keeps coming in, that I'm saying to people, when the phone rings the next time, don't just say yes. Just say, well, leave it with me, I'll get back to you. And actually start thinking about what you're doing. And thinking, again, as we would do in business, the 3, 5, 10-year plan. Do you want to be in 10 years' time still getting on the bus, still going out? And I'm not being derogatory here, please. I'm never derogatory, but do you want to be in 10 years' time still going out delivering the same message to the same small circuit or churches and centres that you work in? Or do you want something more out of this? And that's a question only you can answer. I know a lot of us want more out of this. A lot of us want to go down the path. We've got the lovely Craig Morris has just joined us. And Craig's mediumship is wonderful, but he's also got the mentorship schemes going on the side and things like that. And I think that's brilliant, because I'm taking my mediumship into the next phase. I'm moving along with it. I'm allowing it to grow. I'm allowing it to develop and blossom and bloom. Not just, oh, this Sunday I'm there, that Sunday I'm there, that Sunday I'm there, next year or this Sunday. Spirit is all about movement, about life, and we should be reflecting that in our approach and our workings with it. You've all gone quiet. What have I said?
Oh, again,
I said, I think.
So I'm glad that what you've just spoke about, and I'm glad that you mentioned that Craig has joined us, because next year Craig and I are doing a residential course at Hackney College called Modern Mediumship for the Modern Medium, which
Brilliant.
is exactly part of what we were referring to. But if we come back to what Angela was saying there about, if you look, for want of a better word, tougher mediums, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's a much bigger, in short, yes, but it's a much bigger subject than just saying yes. Because, so, for example, there may be somebody who has a mental imbalance and has medication for that. Well, we have to embrace the fact that the spirit world is a world of intelligence. And sadly, there are doctors going to the spirit world and people of medical knowledge going to the spirit world every second of the day. The spirit world, I believe truly that the spirit world will adjust to people's medications, people's addictions, whatever that may mean. Now, that I'm not saying that it's okay to go onto a platform as pissed as a newt because you've just been to the pub before you went to the church to get some Dutch courage. I'm not suggesting that for 1 minute. But if, shall we say, prescribed medication, I believe the spirit world will adjust the energies and the relationship with the individual to overcome and negate that. But I think there is a limit where, because there is a responsibility, of course, with mediumship. We are playing with other people's lives. We are working with other people's loved ones from the spirit side of life, with other people's spiritual journey that they're on. A lot of people, not all people, but a lot of people come to mediums because they are in need of something, or they are broken in one way. And we have to, and that, so there is a responsibility with that medium, not only to the well-being of the client, but to present themselves at a level. And there are those people maybe who are, for whatever reason, medical reasons, social reasons, or whatever reasons, maybe should be stepping back from mediumship. That doesn't mean a spiritual journey, but from the responsibility of mediumship, maybe in that chapter of their life, until things change, where they can embrace that responsibility on a level standing.
I had a conversation with a medium literally 4 days ago, and they said something about, where they are, where they're working. And I said, put it this way, as you walk out of the door, going to go and take a service, do you feel joy? Do you feel like, oh, this is going to be wonderful? We are going to work wonderfully together. Because if you don't, then maybe you should ask yourself why. Maybe you should just ask yourself that question. Lovely Sylvie Theus, apologies if I said that wrong. Maybe self-development should stand at the beginning of every development, and an understanding of different states of consciousness, like meditation. Some good points there. Thank you, my darling. Andy Ford. Mediums should be trained to understand the bereavement process that people experience. Very good point. Very good point. But it's not just bereavement, is it? Because we're seeing now sitters are approaching us to find out. We're not talking fortune telling here, but I'm seeing the rise of, when I say exceptional tutors like yourself, again, I'm not blowing smoke or anything. Andy comes into this about spiritual assessments. Now, I think spiritual assessments really are a big way forward, because it's good. Most people who come into a church, and I've said this often at Paul, well, we're empty, but there's nobody here. You've had your evidence. Why do you come back next week wanting more evidence? Start applying that evidence. Take that counsel, take that healing from that knowledge and understanding that we continue. And not only do we continue in an active way. But people, and especially now, the state of the world it's in, people just want that little bit of insight into their own paths. And again, anybody out there who's not heard of spiritual assessments, this is not fortune telling or anything. Because I always say, if there's a 6'2", dark-haired, handsome stranger, he's mine, all right? He's not yours, he's mine first and foremost, so forget it. But this is the spirit world, so just to give you some thoughts, to give you some, insight, and in amongst that is the evidence, because you just think, oh my God, this is what I've been thinking, this is where I've been struggling, this is where I have, found difficulties, and this is what they're talking about. Anyway. Any final thoughts, anybody?
Yeah. I think maybe I know we have been talking about this before, Lawrence, but as Angela says, should we deliver stronger mediums? I believe so in one form or another. But the next question for me is, how are we creating the stronger mediums?
Yeah.
And to me, I believe you will agree with me. To me, it's very much about education.
Yeah.
Much about education. And when we look at how you develop as a medium these days, it might take 1 or 2 weeks at the college. You have a weekend here and a weekend there, and you have a lot of fragments of teaching.
Yeah.
And there is nothing there to bind it all together.
Yeah.
You have to sort all these things out yourself. And my own experience, and Lawrence, I know you have been seeing a little bit of the education system I put together. I've been running here in Denmark a couple of times, where actually taking the baby steps with them, and within less than 2 years, actually bring a total baby to become quite a strong medium.
Yeah. Yeah.
But taking them each step all the way through. And that can be a combination of the same tutor, but I use different tutors. I know you have been of some of the vegans, their team for the advanced part of it there. So it's to me, it's very, very much so important to look at, if we're going to make stronger mediums, how are we doing that?
Yeah.
We need to put them into the gym, don't we? We need to work them. We need to structure it. We need to give them the understanding of the mechanics behind it.
Yeah.
Give them the strength to go out there, meet their clients, meet the congregations, meet the no's.
Yeah.
The case is, these days, everybody want a quick fix.
Yeah.
They don't want to use 10 years to work on the mediumship. So how can we meet them in their needs? We can't do it in 2 or 3 weekends or 1 or 2 weeks, but we can do it within a few years if they are dedicated, if they really want their mediumship. We can take them through a progress. I know of experience, quite a few is getting halfway and realize, oh, this is really not for me. I want to go in a different direction. And that's fine, because they discovered the mediumship.
Yeah.
They discovered that this is not the way for me. So was maybe only using 6 months to get to that conclusion, or 1 year. They didn't use 5 years sitting, running around churches and centers and taking all different kind of things to realize, oh, I'm not getting there. Yeah. So maybe we need to look into how are we supporting the mediums in the future? How are we in the best way giving them that strong foundation to stand on, to make them solid within themselves, that within their own mediumship.
Start to present a cohesive basis for training. And again, this brings us back nicely to the mentorship programs that I'm seeing. I was chatting to Angela earlier, and we've seen this process happen throughout the movement since the early 1900s, that mediums will come through this different phases of, they will be out working, and when I say premier bookings, I'm not being detrimental to other, but they are picking up premier bookings. And then you start to see, and this was reflected back with Gordon Higginson and mediums of that era, the pulling back from the public platforms so much to start engaging on these mentorship programs. So instead of doing 20 workshops a year and hoping for 10 people and saying, right, I've had 200 people go through my hands this year, just have 10 go through your hands in 1 year. But the level of support and the level of confidence and understanding and exploration that we can instill in that 10 people will probably produce much better results than having 200 people just going through a succession of one-day workshops, which to me encourages this, what I coin the phrase of the 90-minute spiritualist. You know, here I am, all right, I'm going to be all spiritual now, right, that's out of the way, carry on, I've got to go on and live my life. Well, actually, no, this should be in your life. This should be in your thought and your consciousness all the time. I've done a lot of talking tonight, I do apologise. But I am so grateful to all of you. Thank you, Jack and Tim, for taking time out. I know you've got a very busy, that Jackie works it far too hard. See, I do the opposite here at Paul. I'll get somebody down for a week and, you know, I feel guilty asking them to do one service. Totally opposite. Jack, you're in there 24/7. Right, come on, 3 o'clock, get on the road. We've got to be there at 8.
Lawrence, can I, because this is a Lyceum and it's about educating people, can I set a challenge to your viewers?
Oh, go on. We like that.
Okay, so for all mediums, they use the phrases clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience on a daily basis. What's known traditionally as the 3 C's. We know there are 6. It's accepted that there are 6 spiritual senses, but traditionally there are the 3 C's: clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. So my challenge is, and your viewers will have to go and research this. So who coined those phrases? Who coined those phrases? Let me give you 3 options. The Marquis of Pasiga. I'm not going to tell you who I believe it is. The Marquis of Pasiga, Emanuel Swedenborg, and Franz Mesmer. All mediums should know those 3 names. Mm-hmm. They all knew each other. If I can give you a hint, what links them is a vagrant gentleman, a young gentleman in his early 20s called Victor Race. Victor Race. And there lies your answer.
Right, I think I know who I think it is, but I'm not going to spoil people's fun, because this is the beauty, isn't it? This is what spiritualism should be doing. It should be engaging the mind. It should be making you think. It should be making you, even now as we're talking, you're all Googling away out there furiously, which is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Angela, any last thoughts, my darling?
Yes, I want to be the first person in the country to get a proper degree in mediumship. Because if you think about the way that mediumship is taught on one-day workshops, there ought to be a far more structured approach that takes you through learning about yourself, knowing who you are first, knowing what feeds your soul. I mean, we're all different. We're told that the clairs are given to us very much depending on our own strengths. And I feel that if we can find out who we are, then there'll be a lot less time wasted in going on courses that really are not serving you, and that people become more focused. So give me the means and I will be there, one of the first to get you a degree in mediumship. That's what I'm looking for, when it's a structured approach and we don't think about sending anybody out on a platform until they've been doing at least 3 years of good, solid background development work, so that they can develop in a safe way, that they are supported appropriately, that they're among people who want them to succeed, and that they are not sent out onto a platform too early, or think that that's where the success lies, and that's how they should aim their, that's what they should aim for. That's my feeling.
Yeah, because you open up yet another avenue of discussion here with what I term the electronic medium and the rise in the electronic medium. And I've seen it. I've got X amount of likes. I've got X amount of comments. That actually means nothing. I'm sorry. That really doesn't mean anything. When we see so many views, there is these little things in Facebook. If you dig deeper, there's what we call 3-second views. And that's where people have done exactly what we do with the telling. They do channel hopping. So somebody channel hop through you and just gone, oh, this is boring, move on. But that still counts, and when you say I've got 18, 19, 20,000 views, well, how many people are you actually engaging with? How many people are you sharing something with? And how many people are going to benefit and grow and start to seek their own journey through what's happened? But love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Are you outside over there, Jack?
No, we're not. No.
You're not outside. I can hear a bird. You haven't taken your bird with you, have you?
Oh, I have the dog.
Oh, right.
There's starlings here, and I think thrush and things like that. Yeah.
You don't have starlings
flying around.
Yeah.
You don't have starlings in Denmark.
Yes, she can't hear you. She's sitting outside.
She can shout at me later. Sorry. We were sat on Paul Keane as a starling, and we said, "Oh, it's a starling." Like, well, we don't have those in Denmark. And we were a bit, are you sure? Are you sure?
Starling pie. Starling
Thank you so much for sparing your time, and insightful as always, and just amazing. It just blows my mind. Lovely people like you are willing to donate your time in the furtherance of what we're passionate about. So thank you so much. Next week we have Talk of the Devil, the lovely Craig Morris, along with Sandra Mitchell-Atherius will be joining us for a Lyceum evening. So that is next Saturday at 7 p.m. GMT, which will be shared to all the platforms that we are with tonight. So we have from Paul's side, my page, the Paul Church page, and the Paul Church YouTube page. And Jack, from your side, you have
the Danish Spiritual Association and the association's YouTube channel as well.
Brilliant.
And believe it's on Between Spirits as well.
Yes, in Between Spirit, and your own personal page as well. So we're just starting this as from now, going that little bit further, because we've got a lot to share, a lot to talk about, and it's a joy. So thank you all. Thank you all for joining, everybody, and take care. We will see you all again soon. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.